So I went on in the front room, and Judith seemed to kind of warm up to me and asked me a lot of questions about Nevada, and finally she says she's heard me spoke of as a fighting man and hoped I ain't had no trouble in Panther Springs. I told her no, only I had to hit one black whiskered thug from Cordova over the head with a cuspidor. At that she jumped up like she'd sot on a pin. "That was my Uncle Jabez Granger!" she hollered. "How dast you, you big bully! You ought to be ashamed, a great big man like you picking on a little feller like him, which don't weigh a ounce over 215 pounds." "Aw, shucks!" I said contritely. "I'm sorry, Judith." "Just as I was beginning to like you," she mourned. "Now he'll write to Pap and prejudice him agin you. You just gotta go and find him and apologize to him and make friends with him." "Oh, heck!" I said. But she wouldn't listen to nothing else. So I went out and clumb on to Captain Kidd, went back to the Golden Steer, and when I come in everybody crawled under the tables. "What's the matter with you all?" I said fretfully. "I'm looking for Jabez Granger." "He's left for Cordova," says the barkeeper, sticking his head up from behind the bar. Well, there weren't nothing to do but foller him, so I rode by the jail, and Glaze was at the winder, and he says eagerly, "Air you ready to pay me out?" "Be patient, Glaze," I says. "I ain't got the dough yet, but I'll get it somehow as soon as I get back from Cordova." "What?" he shrieked. "Be calm like me," I advised. "You don't see me getting all het up, do you? I gotta go catch Judith Granger's Uncle Jabez and apologize to the old illegitimate for busting his conk with a spittoon. I'll be back tomorrow, or the next day at the most." Well, his language was scandalous, considering all the trouble I was going to just to get him out of jail. But I refused to take offense. I headed back to the Granger cabin, and Judith was on the front porch. I didn't see Aunt Henrietta. She was back in the kitchen washing dishes and singing, "They've laid Jesse James in his grave," in a voice which loosened the shingles on the roof. So I told Judith where I was going, and asked her to take some pies and cakes and things to the jail for Glaze, account of the beans was ruining his stomach, and she said she would. So I pulled stakes for Cordova. It laid quite a ways to the east, and I figured to catch up with Uncle Jabez before he got there, but he had a long start and was on a mighty good hoss, I reckon. Anyway, Captain Kidd got one of his hellfire streaks and insisted on stopping every few miles to buck all over the landscape, till I finally got sick of his mulishness and busted him over the head with my pistol. By this time we'd lost so much time I'd never overtaken Uncle Jabez at all, and it was getting daylight before I come in sight of Cordova. Well, about sun up, I come on to a old feller and his wife in a ramshackle wagon, drawed by a couple of skinny mules with a hound dog. One wheel had run off into a sinkhole, and the mules were so poor and good for nothing they couldn't pull it out. So I got off and laid hold onto the wagon, and the old man said, "Wait a minute, young feller, whilst me and the old lady gets out to lighten the load." "What for?" I asked. "Set still." So I hoisted the wheel out, but if it had been stuck any tighter, I might have had to use both hands. "By golly," says the old man, "I'd have swore nobody but Breckenridge Elkins could do that." "Well, I'm him," I says, and they both looked at me with reverence, and I asked them was they going to Panther Springs. "We aim to," says the old woman, kind of hopeless. "One place is as good as another to old people which has been robbed out of their life savings." "You all been robbed?" I asked, shocked. "Well," says the old man, "I ain't in the habit of burdening strangers with my woes, but as a matter of fact we has. My name's Hopkins. I had a ranch down on the Pecos till the drought wiped me out and we moved to Panther Springs with what little we saved from the wreck. In a ill-advised moment I started speculating on buffler hides. I put in all my cash buying a load over on the Llano Estacado, which I aimed to freight to Santa Fe and sell at a fat profit. I happen to know they're fetching a higher price there now than they air in Dodge City. And last night the whole blame cargo disappeared into thin air, as it were. We was stopping at Cordova for the night, and the old lady was sleeping in the hotel, and I was camped at the edge of town with the wagon. During the night somebody snuck up and hit me over the head. When I come to this morning, hides, wagon, and team was all gone, and no trace. When I told the city marshal, he just laughed in my face and asked me how I'd expect him to track down a load of buffalo hides in a town that was full of 'em. Dang him, they was packed and corded neat with my old brand, the Circle A, marked on 'em in red paint. Joe Emerson, which owns the saloon and most all the town, taken a mortgage on our little shack in Panther Springs and loaned me enough money to buy this measly team and wagon. If we can get back to Panther Springs, maybe I can get enough freighting to do so we can kinda live anyway." "Well," I said, much moved by the story, "I'm going to Cordova, and I'll see if I can't find your hides." "Thank ye kindly, Breckenridge," says he, "but I got a idee them hides is already far on their way to Dodge City. Well, I hopes you has better luck in Cordova than we did." So they driv on west, and I rode east, and got to Cordova about an hour after sunup. As I come into the edge of town, I seen a signboard about the size of a door stuck up, which says on it in big letters, "No cowherders allowed in Cordova." "What the hell does that mean?" I demanded wrathfully of a feller which had stopped by it to light him a cigarette. And he says, "Just what it says. Cordova's full of buffler hunters in for a spree, and they don't like cowboys. Big as you be, I'd advise you to light a shuck for somewheres else. Bull Krogan put that sign up, and you ought to see what happened to the last puncher which ignored it." "Expletive deleted," I says in a voice which shook the beans out of the mesquite trees for miles around. And so saying, I pulled up the sign and headed for Main Street with it in my hand. I am as peaceful and mild-mannered a critter as you could hope to meet, but even with me a man can go too damn far. This here's a free country, and no derned hairy-necked buffalo skinner can draw boundary lines for us cowpunchers and get away with it. Not whilst I can pull a trigger. They was very few people on the street, and sech as was looked at me surprised like. "Where the hell is them fool buffalo hunters?" I roared. And a feller says, "They're all gone to the race track east of town to race hosses, except Bull Krogan, which is taking hisself a dram in the Diamond Bar." So I lit and stalked into the Diamond Bar with my spurs a jingling and my disposition getting thornier every second. They was a big hairy critter in buckskins and moccasins standing at the bar drinking whiskey and talking to the barkeep, and a flashy dressed gent with slick hair and a diamond horseshoe stick pin. They all turned and gaped at me, and the hunter reached for his belt where he was wearing the longest knife I ever seen. "Who air you?" he gasped. "A cowman," I roared, brandishing the sign. "Air you Bull Krogan?" "Yeah," says he. "What about it?" So I busted the signboard over his head, and he fell onto the floor yelling bloody murder and trying to draw his knife. The board was splintered, but the stake it had been fastened to was a pretty good-sized post, So I took and beat him over the